It is mid-October 2025. Welcome to the God 21 video. Hope everyone caught the last installment, which was my conversation with Nathan Lucius. The first time I've had a guest on this series, we were knocking a few ideas around there. And the series continues with this one because, well, this realm of existence continues, so the big questions about it are naturally going to continue also. And in this video, I want to advance the idea of this reality being some sort of computer coded existence. So, a matrix, a simulation, call it what you will, but everything running at its base core level on kind of mathematical coding. More and more around me, I'm seeing evidence of this being the case. It expresses itself through apparent synchromysticism, synchronicities, and the amount that I'm getting now is just ridiculous. I was typing up the notes to this show earlier, and just as I was, there was a video playing, and as I was typing the word energy came through on the video. That's just one of so many examples. And for me, it provides us with proof that the nature of this reality is a bit like a script or a code. There are rules of engagement. There are methods of operation which were put into place by the architect of this realm, whatever force or whatever entity that may be, when it was constructed. So I want to include a couple of excerpts from a movie, a very revelatory movie. And so if you're watching the YouTube version of this video, you won't be able to see those excerpts because obviously YouTube would take the video down on copyright grounds. So if you are watching this on YouTube, you might want to head to one of the other platforms where this video is hosted, Odyssey or Rumble, and watch the version there. If you're watching this on Odyssey or Rumble, you will see the full version, of course. I also want to include some song lyrics as well from Kate Bush, who is an artist who definitely knows a thing about a thing or two. So, could coding theory explain why certain things play out the way they do? And how about this? By way of example, I want to read out what I wrote in my book, Musical Truth Volume 1, about the amazing amount of synchronicities or coincidences concerning the Titanic event of April 2012 and a novel which had been put out some, 14 years previous. This is a novel written by Morgan Robertson. It was called Futility, and it told the story of an unsinkable ocean liner named the Titan, which collided with an iceberg in the North Atlantic in the month of April and sank with huge loss of life, largely through there not being enough lifeboats available. 14 years later, as we know, the Titanic sunk in circumstances uncannily similar to what have been depicted in the novel. And of course, many alternative researchers will tell you that was not actually the Titanic which sank because the White Star Line switched the boats and they passed off another one which had been deemed a write off as the Titanic, and they sank it in basically a massive insurance scam. Have a look at the work of John Hamer for much more on this. And also, just to mention, conspiracy researchers will also be quick to tell you that the Titanic just happened to be carrying Benjamin Guggenheim, Isidore Straus, the head of the Macy's department stores, and John Jacob Astor, all three of whom were providing the main opposition to the creation of the US Federal Reserve. And they all conveniently died in that shipping disaster. Another event worth a mention, and again, these are only just two examples in an absolute plethora of them. There are so many others I could cite, but I don't want this video to be 8 hours long. So, another extraordinary coincidence appeared to come from the Pet Shop Boys song called King's Cross. And this was a track from their 1987 album titled Actually. It was released 2 months before a massive fire devastated the London train station of the same name, killing 31 people and injuring over 100 more. Although the official account of the lyrics was that they referred to desperation and unemployment, they appeared to eerily foreshadow the disaster, with lines like, "Only last night I found myself lost by the station called King's Cross. Dead and wounded on either side, you know it's only a matter of time." So many, and I myself would have adhered to this wholeheartedly in previous times, would put that phenomenon down to what's known as predictive programming. Essentially, the instigators of the event taken their cue from depictions of it, which had been placed in movies or songs or other expressions of popular culture. And I used to think that was the only reason this got done. So the movie makers or the TV show makers would be in on the plot, and they would know that this real world event was coming, and they would deliberately code it into the narratives of these movies. But I'm now wondering whether, in fact, the depiction of these scenes in the movies is helping to manifest these events to come into apparent reality. And the coding of this realm on an unseen level, so we're not aware of it unless we apply critical thought to it, it's just clicking away in the background. The coding sees to it that events play out in a certain way according to how they've already been depicted or coded to play out in the movie or the TV show or the song. So I certainly think there's something to that, and I'll be delving further into this subject area, particularly for a presentation that I'll be giving at the Questioning History and Science event. Yes, happily that one is back after a bit of a hiatus. Gloria Moss is bringing back her questioning events, and there's one happening in March at the Delta Hotel in Slough. I'll be one of the featured speakers there, and my talk will be all about the phenomenon of predictive programming, but I'll be exploring this new way of looking at it and wondering whether it could be a result of the matrix coding of this reality. So if you want to get your tickets for that, I'll put a link in the notes below. There are many reasons to suspect that the illusory matrix is starting to crack and fail as well. So there's a whole load of people so-called waking up in these times. How could you not? The agendas that are being foisted on humanity are so bloody blatant that it's a wonder anyone has not got wise to it yet. They couldn't be more blatant if they bashed you about the head violently with a baseball bat studded with nails whilst screaming through a bullhorn, "I am a social engineering agenda. Wake the fuck up, you ignorant bastard." But people still slumber on. There are, however, a large number of people who are getting wise to the fact that this reality, this world, is not the way it's been presented to us all our lives. And I have to wonder if the vast number of people embarking on these conscious awakenings, stripping away the layers of lies and deception, is causing cracks to appear in this illusory reality, the Matrix. So there have been some very bizarre stories reported in recent times. My mind goes immediately to reports of so-called phantom cities. So these are skylines of an apparent city, which are appearing like a holographic projection in various parts of the world, like a mirage, if you like. And then they're just fizzling out, fading away, and disappearing. So what is causing that? Also, a whole load of people have reported there being two suns in the sky at the same time. And you can get footage. People have filmed what they've seen, and it does appear to show two suns. One is usually glowing bright yellow or orange, the way we remember the sun always used to be. And the other one is a white disk, which appears to be the sun that we have for the most part now. Look up at the sky and you'll see this white thing, which does not resemble the way the sun used to look. And in some cases, the white disk appears to be something of an overlay over the existing glowing yellow one. So what is that all about? Why are people seeing two suns? Could that also be evidence of cracks in the matrix? And for as long as people continue to wake up to truth, can we expect to see more glitches in the matrix and more bizarre things happening because the coding is starting to break down? So the coding only manifests reality in a certain way if enough people believe in it and if enough people are perceiving it into reality. Again, the old phrase, if a tree falls in the woods and there's no one there to hear it, does it make a sound? This speaks to the idea that we perceive this reality into existence with our consciousness. And if we weren't there to do that, this reality would not exist the way we see it. It might exist on a core mathematical code level, but we would not see all the things that we do when our consciousness is engaged. I'm reminded of a conversation I had a few weeks ago with a show host named Anam and also Howdy McCoskey. So Anam had got Howdy and myself on his show, and we were talking through our ideas about the true nature of this reality and so-called God and such. And both of them, Anam and Howdy, told stories of how they had gone out into the street at a particular time, and this street had been empty. No people around, no vehicles. And as soon as they'd stepped out into it, they noticed people starting to appear. And the scene just started to get busy and bustling. And they were wondering, if they hadn't stepped out into that street, would all these people and all this activity have gone ahead? Would it have happened in the same way? Or did they somehow perceive it into being? Was all this stuff playing out to feed their individual consciousness? I guess this feeds into the idea of NPCs, so-called, non-player characters. So it's the idea that there are a certain finite number of us who are having meaningful experiences in this reality. And the role of many that we see around us and who integrate with us in our lives are these non-player characters, backdrop people. Their role is to fill out the background detail, but they're not there to have any kind of meaningful experience themselves. That factor seems to play into this idea. The concept of this reality being illusory and coded and a projection was alluded to in a great show, which I've mentioned in previous podcasts, put out by the BBC, of all people. It was called Ashes to Ashes, and it was the sequel to the 2 series of Life on Mars. They made 3 series of Ashes to Ashes, and it was set in the 1980s. Life on Mars had been set in the 70s, full of period detail, great character development and great plots and a lot of humour. But it was very allegorical in nature. And I feel it was telling us the story of what this place is and where we come from and what's really going on here. Because, spoiler alert, there's a bunch of cops in this show, and right at the end of the series, we come to discover that they're actually all dead. And they're in some sort of purgatory or middle ground kind of spiritual holding area where they must undergo certain experiences and face up to certain truths before they can move on to what lies beyond, the original heavenly spiritual realm, if you like. And in the last episode of the show, you got a character, Jim Keats, portrayed by Daniel Mays, who tears off the roof of the police station where the series has been taking place. And as he rips off the roof, you see a sky full of stars. And you realise that the police station was a facade. It wasn't real. The characters just believed that it was real. And the stars in the sky are, of course, what lies beyond, an original reality, I guess. I can't find the clip online, and if I put it on the YouTube video, it would just get taken down, but anyone that's seen the show will know what I'm talking about. And otherwise, you might want to track down that final episode of Ashes to Ashes for what I believe are a lot of home truths being put out there in plain sight in metaphorical form. So the movie that I wanted to mention is one that came across my radar again last week. I watched it for the first time since it came out in 1998. And at that time, I viewed it in New York, went to see it in a cinema there. And it's set in New York, Manhattan, so it's very fitting. And it comes from Darren Aronofsky, who's a director and a screenwriter who, again, I would suggest knows a thing or two and is putting truth out there in the form of his movies. He also did a film called White Swan with Natalie Portman in more recent times, which is all about trauma-based mind control. satanic ritual abuse when you strip away the surface narrative and get down to the allegorical content. So he's definitely clued up, and I would suggest in the club. And Pi, the movie was simply called Pi, P-I, based on that amazing transcendental number, 3.14, whatever, was his debut film. And it seems he was given carte blanche pretty much to say whatever he wanted to say in the movie. So he produced it, he directed it, and he wrote the screenplay. In this first clip, we've got some amazing revelations. The film's narrative centers around a character called Max Cohen, who is paranoid delusional. He's presented as possibly bipolar, anxious. He is paranoid, but he's a mathematical genius, and he stores a lot of knowledge in his mind. And that knowledge turns out to be of interest to certain interested parties. In this clip, he encounters the character Lenny Meyer for the first time, and they get into a conversation. And they address this amazing number of pi and how it expresses itself in the core reality of this creation. And then they get into things like the golden ratio and the Fibonacci sequence. And all throughout the movie, the narrative is presenting the idea that this is a mathematically coded reality. That is the central basis of this film Pi. So here's that first clip, which tells us a lot.
What do you do?
I work with computers, math.
Math? What kind of math?
Number theory, research mostly.
No way, I work with numbers myself. I mean, not traditional. I work with the Torah. Amazing! You know, Hebrew's all math. It's all numbers. You know that? Here, look. The ancient Jews used Hebrew as their numerical system, eh? Each letter's a number. Like the Hebrew A, Aleph, it's 1. B, Bet, it's 2. You understand? But look at this. The numbers are interrelated. Like take the Hebrew word for father. Av, Aleph, Bet. 1, 2 equals 3. All right? Hebrew word for mother, Aim, Aleph, Mem. 1, 40 equals 41. Sum of 3 and 41, 44. All right? Now, Hebrew word for child. All right? Mother, father, child. Yelad. That's 10, 30, and 4. 44. Torah is just a long string of numbers. Some say that it's a code sent to us from God.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's just kid stuff. Check this out, okay? The word for the Garden of Eden, Kedem. Numerical translation, 144. Now the value of tree of knowledge, all right, in the garden, right? Eitz HaChaim, 233. 144, 233. Now you can take those numbers. So the,
you know, like the Fibonacci sequence?
Fibonacci.
Fibonacci's an Italian mathematician in the 13th century. If you divide 144 into 233, the result approaches theta.
Theta?
Theta. The Greek symbol for golden ratio, golden spiral.
Wow. I never saw that before. That's like that series you find in nature? Like the face of a sunflower?
Wherever the spirals.
You see this math everywhere.
And if you're watching this video on YouTube, of course, you won't have just seen the clip. So again, I urge you to go and watch this on Odyssey or Rumble, where you can see it. The second clip is a lot briefer, and this is of great interest to me personally because it brings in a particular number. That number is 216. I almost fell off my seat when I watched this film back again last week for the first time in 27 years. Because the number 216 is of particular interest to me. It's part of an amazing mathematical sequence which is unique in nature, and it's based around the number 9. The sequence starts with 27, 3 times 9, and this is where we get into the concept of the 27 Club in the music industry. This is the large number of music makers who've passed away in bizarre circumstances at the age of 27. It's been endlessly documented. There are so many names that you can mention as being part of that club. So we start there, and if we double the number each time, we get to 54, then 108, then 216. And I featured the number 216 in my debut truth fiction novel, The Cause and the Cure, which I published in 2019. The central character, who I created, Verity Hunter, has been given the birth date of the 21st of June, because this is the summer solstice in what we refer to as the Northern Hemisphere. So her birth date can be expressed as 216, 21st of the 6th. And in my novel, I've got her experiencing endless synchronicities involving the number 216 cropping up everywhere in her life.
The high priest had one ritual to perform in the Holy of Holies. He had to intone a single word.
Yeah?
That word was the true name of God.
So?
The true name, which only the Kohanim knew, was 216 letters long.
You're telling me that the number in my head is the true name of God?
Yes, it's the key to the Messianic age.
At the time I wrote that novel, my state of consciousness was not where it is now, and I'd not done the research that I've done in more recent times. So the reason I had Verity seeing expressions of her born date everywhere is because at the time that was happening to me. I was seeing expressions of my own born day everywhere I looked, literally every day. Every time I looked at a clock, every time I looked at a DVD counter, every time I looked at the mileometer on my car, I'd just find expressions of my own born date being barked out at me. So I had that same thing happening with Verity with the number 216, 21st of the 6th, because it was an interesting number. Then if we double 216, we get to 432. And this might raise the eyebrows of anyone, again, that's done a deep dive into music industry research. Because 432 hertz, cycles per second, is said to be the harmonic frequency to which recorded music and music performed live should be pitched. Musical instruments should be pitched so that the A note falls at 432 hertz, so musicologists and audiophiles tell us, and then all the other notes fall into accordance with that. 440 hertz, which has been the international standard tuning pitch for several decades, by design obviously, is anything but harmonic, so we're told. When we listen to music pitched to 440, it can put us into states of unease and discordance, because this is a very bad frequency which does not resonate well with the human body and the rest of this creation. But 432 does. 432 is the one. So very interesting that 432 should be a part of this mathematical sequence. And again, I would ask whether this can be the product of human design, of a bunch of people sitting around a table saying, and then we'll do this, and then we'll do that, or whether it's more likely to be the product of an automated reality, which runs on a kind of AI type system, which has been mathematically coded, the rules of engagement have been set in place, and it just clunks and chugs along mechanically, doing what it was always programmed to do. And that's why we find all these amazing numbers expressing themselves the way they do. So after 432, we go to 864, and there are expressions of 216, 432, and 864 seemingly encoded endlessly into the cosmos, into the measurements and the movements of the sun, the moon, and other luminaries out there. So it's all about the numbers. Pi is a very important one, which does express itself in nature, in the way this reality plays out, as hinted at in the movie, and also as hinted at in this Kate Bush song. It's called Pi, and I've got a clip from the lyric video here in the non-YouTube version of this video, and this gives an insight into some of the knowledge that Kate herself must have had. Kate Bush, in my view, ticks all the boxes for having been mind-controlled herself. There's a lot of symbolic clues and cryptic sort of evidence to show that this would have been the case. But she clearly was also schooled in a lot of arcane esoteric knowledge, normally reserved for initiates of secret society mystery schools and the like. So Kate would appear to have been raised and groomed with that type of knowledge, and she would appear to have been allowed to put some of it into some of her incredible songs. So here's one example of that.
Sensitive man with an obsessive nature and deep fascination for numbers. And a complete infatuation with the calculation of pi. Oh, we love his numbers. And they run it in a great big circle. In a circle of infinity. 3.14153597932.
So it's all coding, folks. It's all numbers. It's all maths, the way I see it, and the way evidently others see it. Filmmakers, songwriters, and of course many authors, researchers, and other speakers. At this point, I want to step to the feedback section, which is always a popular part of these videos. And I've just got a couple for you this time, so we're not going to get overloaded and bombarded with much more heavy information. Just a couple of pieces of feedback for viewers to ruminate on. So the first one reads, I'm absolutely loving the God series, and I wholeheartedly agree with the prognosis so far. Could I ask you for God 21 to possibly clarify your opinion on one aspect? As I understand it, you are suggesting the idea that the original creation was potentially good, and this realm is some sort of overlay. I think it's fair to say that we can all agree that these meat suits we are trapped inside are nothing more than torture instruments designed to actively create suffering. We can also agree that the whole life cycle of tearing apart, then eating dead bodies only to shit them out is a hellish wheel of constant suffering and death. Even being vegan is still killing plants and the creatures that live on those plants. So, where does the original creation stop and the overlay begin, in your opinion? Because surely our bodies and the life cycle are from original creation. Or is this entire realm and everything in it created by the overlay? Well, it's a great question, and it's not one that I would claim to have any ready answer to. In terms of where original creation may end and the overlay begins, I think there are some clues in the human body and in human consciousness. So within the human body, we have what is referred to in certain cultures as the chakra system. And this appears to be the 7 vortex points, these light energy portals, which are our connectedness back to source energy. And according to many who study these subjects, when the crown chakra is illuminated and it's associated with the color purple, all these different chakras have different colors, that is the ultimate connection back to source. This also ties into the idea of the raising of the chrism oil and kundalini energy being sent up the human spinal column into the brain, the pineal gland, ultimately in the center of the brain, becoming illuminated and again providing that connectedness back to original God, if you like. Because contrary to what many will tell you, I'm not actually an atheist. I'm very much against the so-called God of this realm, this expression of reality in which we find ourselves, because I do see this entity or this force as demonic, as evil, and I consider this place to have been set up to deliberately facilitate pain and suffering. And from that point of view, it's doing a great job. It's working really well. It's doing everything that it was programmed to do. But I think if you go further, you will find that there is an ultimate supreme creative force, generative force, which some might refer to as the original God, the Most High, if you like. And the illumination of the pineal gland and the expanded state of consciousness that we can experience when that occurs is our pathway back to that original source, in my view. Also, in my view, we have an opportunity when we leave these bodies at the point of physical death, and our consciousness apparently continues, to choose to go back to that original source. Particularly if we've worked out that this place is a trick, it's a con, we don't belong here, it's not our natural home, and under no circumstances would we ever want to come back to this place. As viewers will know, I feel that way myself, and I know that many viewers feel that way also, because they write in and tell me all the time. There's also the human conscience, which is a kind of firewall which prevents most of us, obviously not psychopaths and sociopaths, but those of us who have all of our humanity and our mental faculties and spiritual faculties intact, we're prevented from committing great harm and great evil. Most of us would not go out and commit a murder because we know it's wrong. We wouldn't want that done to us, so we don't do it to other people. Where does that conscience come from? Where does that sense of morality come from? Where does that knowledge of what is right and what is wrong come from? We know it's wrong to undertake certain behaviors. And because of that, we don't, because we realize that if we did, there would be consequences for us and for others, and we don't wish to put those into manifestation. I think the conscience that plagues most of us, the sense of guilt that we feel when we know we've done something that we shouldn't have done, that has probably been harmful, hurtful to others, that sense of right and wrong is another expression of our original true nature and another reminder of where we come from. We come from a place outside of this restricted, hellish realm. And the reason we comprehend morality is because morality does exist in that state of being, in that place, if you like, from which we came. So the question of where original creation ends and the overlay begins is difficult to answer. And the idea of it being an overlay is just one way of looking at things. We can also consider this place to have been deliberately created the way it was, and the vision that the entity or force that created it had in mind is playing itself out brilliantly. But if there is a point where the one ends and the other begins, I think considering where conscience comes from and considering where the opportunity through our human physiology to have a connectedness back to the source from which we came probably provides some of the answers. And that is pretty much all I can say on the matter, because I am by no means an expert on it. And if we're truthful and honest with ourselves, nobody else is either. The best we can hope for is to have an informed opinion or a perspective or a viewpoint, but we should not make the claim that our viewpoint is the correct one and everyone else is wrong, because we're all being held in the same conditions of forgetfulness. We've undergone a memory wipe, a mind wipe at some point, even if that doesn't happen at the point of birth. For some reason, we can't remember anything from before 2 or 3 years of age. We can't remember our first year in this realm. So what chance do we really stand of knowing for certain, for sure, the answer to all the mysteries of this creation when we know that we can't remember our own lives up to a point? It's all deliberate. It's all by design. We're not supposed to remember. We're not supposed to have the answers. It's been programmed that way. The best we can hope for is to come to an informed perspective. Okay, so the final piece of correspondence that I'll read out goes like this. Simulation theory. A simulation is where you game out something to learn how it would work for real. This made sense as I compared it to Event 201, the coronavirus simulation. But this gave me a whole new way of looking at simulation theory, and I began to think about it more. I thought to myself, if I knew I was living in a simulation and I had unlimited resources, what would I do? I would try to create my own simulation to learn everything I can. How would I do this? First, I would create something like a computer that could solve problems faster. I would create something like the Human Genome Project, so I can figure out humans' code language. Then I would create a vaccination protocol where I could attempt to hack this human code. If I thought that I lived in some kind of holosphere, I would create something like HARP, so I could attempt to hack the holosphere. We are told this is weather modification. But if we lived in a simulation that faced known cycles of cataclysms, could you hack the holosphere to alter these events? Let's get back to computers. I would learn about algorithms and how they work. I would create something called AI to use these algorithms to run my own simulation that I would call the metaverse. I would create something called transhumanism. Then this writer goes on to discuss 9/11, and he cites the theories of Dr. Judy Wood in terms of directed energy weapons having been used to effectively melt those towers in New York on that fateful day. He writes, I don't know what happened on 9/11, but I view directed energy weapons, CERN and HARP differently after this thought experiment. I've also followed Ashton Forbes and his theories on the disappearance of MH370. This is the Malaysian airliner. This makes sense if we're in a simulation and it's hackable. In conclusion, I don't know if we're living in some kind of simulation, but it sure feels like whoever is running the world is acting as if we are. And that is a very interesting perspective. The so-called elites clearly have access to knowledge and technology that is not made available to the rest of us. We can get glimpses and hints at some of what they know, but it's clear that they have a power differential over the rest of us, the masses, due to the knowledge that they've accumulated. They know stuff we don't, simply put. And that is why so few of them can control so many of us. So what if among that knowledge, they've got a far more accurate perspective on what this reality is? They know it's mathematical coding lying at the core of everything. And this writer is asking whether so much of this crazy stuff that we see playing out in apparent physical reality, so much of the stuff that the elites do, so many of their agendas, could actually constitute them trying to recreate this simulation, a simulation within a simulation, if you like, or simply better comprehend the true nature of where we're all stuck, because they the evil ones, the sickos, the psychos, are stuck in this place along with the rest of us. They might consider themselves intellectually superior and culturally superior to the rest of us, but they still have to live here as well. They still have to plod through these lives because the laws of time and space apply to them just as much as they do to us. So it's understandable that they would want to get to the bottom of what this place is for their own sakes, never mind how it affects the rest of us. So a lot of what that writer is suggesting does resonate with me. Okay, so we'll leave this one here. I do welcome feedback. If anyone wants to drop comments in the chat sections of the videos below on whatever platform you're watching this, feel free. Or you can email me at markdevlin2022@protonmail.com. And when I come to do God 22, I'll read out some more of these emails and messages, as I generally do. So I'll leave everyone with those thoughts at this stage. If you want to track down the movie Pi from 1998, Darren Aronofsky movie, it comes highly recommended. You'll probably find a copy online somewhere. And I will see you next time. Cheers for now.